When the leaves begin to change and the air begins to chill, sewists and costumers everywhere begin to prepare things that are eerie, elegant, elaborate, and extraordinary. And I am no different. I've been eagerly awaiting this spooky season to create this costume that I sketched up months ago, inspired by the demon Lilith from Mesopotamian and Jewish mythology. I incorporated elements from ancient, pre-Raphaelite, and modern depictions of Lilith into my design, and I'm hoping I can recreate my sketch as accurately as possible. But I've only got a few days until Halloween, so I need to stop talking and start sewing. So originally for this dress, I wanted to drape the entire pattern from scratch, but my first attempt at draping the corset part of the bodice just didn't go as planned. So I've gone a bit astray from my tape lines, but honestly, I don't know if I need them. I'm just gonna try my best to drape without it. Probably not a good idea, but if it doesn't work, I'll just cut this part out and you'll never know what happened.
I decided to leave this part in because I thought it was important to show that everybody just has to start over sometimes.
So I'm going to cheat just a little bit and use a pattern for the corset. Then I'll drape the skirt, the sleeves, and the neckline. Okay, so I've got some fabric scraps here that I'm going to use to make a bit of a rough draft of the corset. If it turns out bad, I'm just going to call it a mock-up. And if it turns out good, I'm going to use it as the lining for the actual finished product.
There isn't much purpose to this shot. I think I just recorded this time-lapse because this is how fast I wish marking and pinning seam allowances went.
Okay, so the lining slash mock-up is done. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. It's not perfect, but I don't feel like starting over for the third time, and I'm running out of time. So we're gonna go ahead and use this, and I think it'll be okay.
For this dress, you'll need your finest Goodwill bedsheet, and I'm just separating a section to use specifically for the corset. Now, as you can see on the tag of this fabric, it says not to iron it, so we must always abide by what the tag says and never break those rules. To make a corset, all you need to do is cut, pin, sew, press, and sew again. Much like a ribeye, a structured bodice is always better bone in. For the center front channel, I'm using a rigid white steel boning, and for the rest of the channels, I'm using a more flexible spiral steel boning. Whenever you're using spiral steel boning, make sure to always put caps on the ends so you don't accidentally stab yourself. Then all you need to do is put all the bones in their respective channels and then bask in the beauty of your hard work.
Halloween is rapidly approaching and I am running out of time, so I'm just gonna lock myself in my sewing room today with my coffee and I'm just going to get as much finished as I possibly can. I don't even have time to do like multiple takes of the talking head portions of this video, so I hope this was fine because I need to get sewing.
The first thing I need to do today is attach the lining to the corset, which luckily is a very quick and easy thing to do. Just kidding, it's actually extremely annoying, tedious, and time-consuming to get everything to line up perfectly. But once you do, you just need to sew it into place and press it over. Normally when attaching a lining, you'd want to understitch the seam allowance, but since I'm going to be draping over the neckline, you're not going to see the seam anyway, so I'm just going to skip that part. Then just flip everything the right way about, and we're back to the shot from the beginning.
So the sewing portion of the corset is all done, and I was really looking forward to moving on to the very stress-relieving process of putting in the grommets, only to find out that I don't have any grommets. I only have eyelets, and since this was sized to be tight laced down a little bit, I don't think eyelets are going to be strong enough, so I guess we need to take a break from our sewing lock-in and go to the store. So I went to the store to get some grommets, and to get the 16 grommets I needed for the back of the bodice, it would have cost me $30. And I just can't justify spending $30 on the back of a Halloween costume that I made out of a Goodwill bedsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and use the eyelets I already have, and the back of this bodice is going to be held together with hopes and dreams.
To put in eyelets, just cut a small hole in the fabric and then use a hammer to release all your pent-up rage. The final step in making a corset is to add the laces in the back.
All right, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I am pretty proud of how this turned out. It's my first time making a corset and I think it turned out pretty good. So let's go ahead and turn it into a dress.
Using some more fabric from the Goodwill bedsheet, I'm going to add some draped details to the bodice. To start draping, just fold over the raw edge and pin the fabric along the neckline.
What I love about draping is it's like sculpting with fabric. You can manipulate it any which way you want and see how it looks, and if you don't like it, tweak it until you get it just exactly the way you want it. So right now I'm just kind of going back and forth between my dress form and my sketchbook and trying to bring the sketch to life as much as possible and making any tweaks that might be necessary. Okay, I'm happy with how this looks, so I'm going to cut away the excess fabric and steam it all into place.
After pinning the pleats and carefully removing everything from the dress form, I hand sew everything into place. And to make sure everything was exactly how I wanted it, I sewed some of it in place while I was wearing it. If you're going to do this, just be careful not to accidentally sew it to anything on underneath you, and make sure what you're sewing is red, so if you accidentally stab yourself, it doesn't make a difference.
It is currently 11:59. I've been sewing with only a few breaks since about 8:20 this morning, and I cannot believe that this is all I have to show for it. Well, this and an absolutely destroyed sewing room. But I am pretty happy with the progress I made, so for now I'm gonna go to bed and I will pick this up again later.
On the agenda for today is sleeves. I'm starting by taking a measurement of my arm and seeing how much drape I want it to have. And I'm going to use those measurements to draw and cut out the sleeve shape that I want. And the shape that I want is this kind of canoe banana shaped thing. Now, to prevent the sleeve from getting lonely, lay it on another piece of fabric and cut out an identical piece. Then force those two pieces to be together for the rest of their lives. Now all you need to do is right your wrongs and you've got yourself a sleeve. And then just repeat those steps until you have as many sleeves as you have arms. Today is going to be dedicated to draping the skirt pattern, so let's do a quick costume change and get to work. I'm pinning muslin to my dress form to get the pattern I want, cutting away the excess when necessary. Each piece of muslin is going to be its own skirt panel in the pattern. I had a lot of fun draping this, but it was also quite challenging since I wanted an asymmetrical waistline, so I couldn't just drape one side panel and copy it onto the other. I had to drape the right and left separately and keep them differentiated throughout the whole project. Once I'm happy with how the muslin looks on the dress form, I take it down and lay it on some paper to straighten up the edges, lengthen the hemline, and turn it into a proper pattern. To make the skirt, we're going to cut out our homemade pattern pieces out of our trusty Goodwill bedsheet. You may notice that I don't have a pattern piece for the back panel. That's because I'm just going to cut out a rectangle of fabric and gather it up to fit in between the two side panels. Speaking of side panels, here I am sewing them to the front panel, and here I am gathering the back panel like I said I was going to. Somebody please count how many times I said panel in the last minute. Last thing we need for this skirt is a waistband, and the good thing about sheets is they come with a practically finished waistband already. Then simply stuff and sew the raw edge of the skirt into the waistband. After adding some hook and eye closures to the waistband, the last thing I need to do is the hem.
I've got a bad idea. So I tried to do the hem, but when I folded it up, it actually weighed the skirt down a bit too much, and so it kind of flowed weird when I walked around. So instead of doing just a regular fold-over sewn hem, I was thinking, demon dress, fire. I'm gonna burn it. So I'm gonna set fire to my dress.
I think if it wasn't for the fact that Halloween was only 2 days away when I was doing this, that I probably would have given up and waited for the wind to die down, but I didn't have time to quit, so I persisted. Whether that was a sane choice or not is debatable. What isn't debatable is the fact that I wouldn't have gotten any of this done without this little wind-proof butane torch I found, so shout out that thing, I guess. I feel like now is a good time for a disclaimer. This isn't very safe. Taking an open flame to fabric can result in a fire if the fabric has natural fibers. I knew this fabric was 100% polyester, so it would melt instead of burn, but that is still creating molten plastic, which is also not very safe. So be smart and don't start any fires or burn yourself. End of disclaimer. Yeah, I just stopped trying to film at this point and managed to finish the rest of the hem off camera. To complete the look, I needed to go to the store to pick up a few accessories, where I saw a costume that made me regret making this whole outfit in the first place. But I was in too deep now, so I grabbed the finishing details I needed, and we were ready for